All right, people, here we are, another episode of ShiftED podcast coming to you. I'm not reaching very far. I have Med Kharbach, who's coming in, PhD. Med is also an educator, researcher. He is the founder of Educator's Technology, which is an amazing website full of great resources. I'll definitely put it in the descriptor of this podcast because you'll want to go check it out. And as we might guess, Med has been dealing a lot with the AI, the panic to make it more purposeful and also ethical in its practice. So I was very excited that he accepted my invite. And well, Med, thanks so much for this. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thanks, Chris. I'm really happy to be with you here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. So, Med, before we start, maybe I'd like to ask you of a couple of memories that you have about your educational journey so far that kind of brought you to where you are today and what you're doing today. What were some of those moments that you could tell us about how it brought you to your current position?
Yeah. So I started as a language teacher. So I started as an EFL, English as a Foreign Language teacher back in Morocco. And at the time when I was teaching there, the web, or what they call the web 2.0, just the revolution of the web 0.0 was just starting. It's around 2000. And so I created this blog who nobody knows, and I started sharing tidbits on how to use technology and social web to teach English. And that's how I started. And in parallel with that, I was doing a lot of work in pedagogy and teaching, in educational topics related to teaching and pedagogy in general. But then when I moved to Canada around 2006, 2007, I did my master's in the Mount and then the PhD. The project that I started in Morocco as a small blog showing teachers how to use technology to teach English grew exponentially to be a large online platform for teachers from all around the world, where I share and review edtech tools that help with not only teaching language, but in teaching in general. So that was around 2010. And now fast forward to 2022, when ChatGPT and generative AI was becoming something that everybody talks about. And now I kind of see the relevance of this technology to what I have already been talking about all these past years about ethic and the importance of technology in teaching. And so I transitioned my focus, including my academic research, to focus on the use of AI in education, especially given that teachers now are in, as you put it, in a panic mode in regards to how to use AI in their teaching. So that's in general the background context to where I am right now, or to how I get here.
And again, amazing blog, amazing resources that you create and share with everyone. Did you have a feeling that AI was going to disrupt so much in education? Did you feel that when it was coming on that, wow, this is another tipping point, like you said, Web 2.0. But did you anticipate the growth of it and how big it was going to be, how much it would impact our system?
Yeah, I kind of, given that my experience in reviewing edtech tools for many years, I knew right away that this is a technology that is completely different. As you know, we did have AI way before. I mean, since the introduction of this of algorithmic thinking in tools like search engines in Google, they use AI, and Netflix kind of recommendations on YouTube and all. So we did have AI before, but the new thing is generative AI, which is something that we did not have. Or we did not have as sophisticated as it is right now. So I knew that we are in front of a very transformative kind of technology. So a technology that you can just prompt and then gives you a written essay that is almost human-like. That's something we never had before. So I knew the disruption is going to be real really, really big for education. So I started working on it, started reading a lot. I mean, doing research, talking to people in the industry, and talking to leaders, to educators, and we've been having very fruitful discussion about the impact of AI in education. But definitely, AI or generative AI in general is totally different. It's different from the Web 2.0, even though Web 3.0. So we are in front of a very transformative period in the cycle of education. I would say even that we're starting now to talk about pre-AI or pre-generative AI and post-generative AI. So just for practical reasons, when I say AI, I mean generative AI. So we don't have to say it all the time. So yeah, so we're talking about education pre-generative AI, and then we have another form of education, or at least there is now a picture of a different landscape of education that is now forming because of the disruption of generative AI.
Totally. And another thing that's occurred, which I've noticed, and you've produced some interesting materials around this, is the idea that we've gone from, just digital literacy to now AI literacy. And you've always been very upfront with it's not about the tools, right? It's really about, being literate when it comes to AI. Could you kind of shine a little bit of a flashlight on what is AI literacy that we should be aware of as educators as we bring our kids through this new, these new platforms that exist out there using AI?
Yeah, Chris, it's true. So I always say this, and I really mean it. So AI integration education is basically a literacy issue. That's what I've been saying all the time, and it's not a tools issue. And I mean, framing it in this way, I think it changes the conversation, because it takes us away from just talking about apps and tools and helps us focus more on understanding what's actually going on when we use AI in teaching and learning. I from my own experience in the world of edtech, we don't want to repeat the same mistake we did before when Web 2.0 was just being, released and revolutionizing the internet. So we're not going to focus only on the tools. We want to focus on the literacy. And by literacy, I'm not just using it in this narrow sense, which is the ability to read and write. I'm using it in a more broad sense, which means just the same way we talk about digital literacy, media literacy, or even assessment literacy. And so it means here just the ability to develop knowledge and competencies in a very specific area. So this kind of knowledge that you develop in a specific area helps you act with a more judgment and understanding. That's the general kind of meaning of literacy here. And so if you look at AI literacy and how it's defined by major organizations like UNESCO and Teach AI and even the US Department of Education, and I have shared a lot of these definitions on my LinkedIn. All of these definitions, they point in the same direction. So AI literacy, it involves a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitude. So it's kind of a trio. And you need to understand how AI works at a basic level, at least. And then you need the skills to use it responsibly, of course, and effectively. And then you need the right dispositions, which means the mental framework or frames or mindset, things like critical thinking and ethical sensitivity and things like that, to be able to use AI in a very effective and ethical way. So the problem that most teachers, I think, and it's understandable that they focus most on tools, and there is a real sense of pressure, I know, but new tools, they appear every week. We have tons of tools flooding the market. But there is a feeling that somewhere out there, there is a magic tool that will solve everything for teachers if only they find them, if only they find it and they find the time, which is not true. So, but the truth is very simple. And I think it's much more reassuring that teachers do not need all these tools. And for most educational purposes, I would say just knowing how to use generative chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini is enough. So that's basically what AI literacy is all about for me. It's about knowing how to use AI more efficiently and in pedagogical ways, and rather than just focusing on the tools themselves.
Absolutely. And you what you mentioned too is very like I have a lot of these conversations with educators about, well, what tools should I use and when and how, and I'm similar to what you're saying, is like just get comfortable with one to start, like your chat or your Gemini or your Copilot. What How do you kind of like help, because we're getting flooded all the time with new tools, as you mentioned. How do you get to a point where you decide, okay, this tool is worth using versus, yeah, I'm going to ditch this tool? Like, is there a process that you go through when you evaluate an AI tool?
Yeah. So as I said first, there are many tools, and they get every day. I get many emails from those platforms and those companies, AI companies, asking me to promote their tools, and I have and I always have the chance to see and 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 examine many tools that are now in the market, and I see that most what teachers really need is a chatbot like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. I personally like ChatGPT more, but I mean, Gemini and Claude, they do the same thing. So if a teacher knows how to write well-crafted prompts, they know how to use prompting techniques, then that's all they need. Probably they might need another tool for generating visuals, and even now for generating visuals for classroom use, the Nano Banana Pro in Gemini does a really wonderful job generating visuals. I mean, again, if you know how to be very detailed in your prompts, then you can get it to generate very amazing visuals that can be good for our classroom use. But other than that, I don't see that many of the tools out there, they use the same technology that ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude are already using. But that said, I would also I would also say that I want to make this clear, but there are certain tools that are designed specifically for teachers and students. And these tools, they can kind of, which I look at them as providing teachers with a shortcut. I know teachers are busy. There is a burnout. The least thing they have now is time to go online and look for tools, or even to master the art or the skill of prompting. And so these kind of tools, they provide teachers with pre-made templates that they can use, for instance, to quickly generate lesson plans, to integrate standards, to generate activities, things like that. So there are certain tools that make it easier, but it's no different than the ChatGPT or Gemini or what Claude does, except that it provides a pre-made template for teachers. Tools like Magic School, School AI, Ed Cafe, and CarePod, Brisk Teaching, all of these schools are around, and some of them are used now in schools in North America here and in the States. But again, as I would say, they provide some help, but if teachers know how to prompt, all they need is ChatGPT or chatbots. That's all. And when it comes to thinking about which tools to use or not, I provide the teachers with a checklist of questions to ask before using these tools, meaning to ask about the privacy. How does the tool collect data, and where it saves this data, and what kind of age appropriateness of the tool in regards to students using the data, and certain functional kind of aspect of the use of the tool. Other than that, I always recommend that teachers focus on how to use the tool and not which tool.
Yeah, totally. I love what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I mean, one of the things, and you've been talking about this, actually, we talked before we hopped on here, on your LinkedIn, where you're looking at assessment a little more closely around AI. And we know that there are mindsets out there that AI is a cheating tool within education, right? And teachers are trying to, lock things down, get like AI detectors, which work horribly badly. Like, how do you approach assessment in this age of AI? What kinds of recommendations or suggestions could you offer to our listeners about that assessment can change in AI, but for the better.
That's right. So again, when I discuss with teachers the quote problem of assessment, it's always a problem of literacy. Just like what I said about AI, it's a literacy issue. It's not a technical or tool issue. The same thing with assessment. So I like to frame it under the broad umbrella of literacy. So we do have a literacy and assessment literacy problem in teaching. And here I have shared some tool, or I shared the guide yesterday on assessment literacy, simply explained. And I based the guide on the works of two very established scholars in the assessment literature. They are James Popham and Richard Siggins. And I like their work. They have been doing some amazing research in the field of assessment for years and years, probably over 25 years ago. And so, and there is this book by James Popham that was published in 2018, so way before ChatGPT was out, and he talked about the problem of assessment literacy. And he said that teachers, when they were, trained, the teaching programs they were trained on, they were not trained explicitly on how to design assessments. And so most of the teaching programs now, they do have a weak spot, which is assessment literacy. And so that's way before even ChatGPT and generative AI. Now, and I can relate to these bold kind of statements Popham made, because when I was having my training as a teacher, we did not have something called assessment literacy as a course or anything. So when we went to the classroom, we have to figure out how to create engaging assessments for our students. And so we were kind of engaged in a trial and error process with our assessment techniques. Anyway, so with generative AI now, the problem of assessment that Popham talked about in 2018 and before becomes even more pronounced now. And so now we have a tool that a student can use to quickly answer any kind of question. Now, the problem is not about the tool. The problem is about the design of the assessment. So now we have a problem of the design. We need to rethink, to reconceptualize the concept of assessment in general. So the tasks and the assignments that used to work before ChatGPT no longer work. So we need to look at other ways to be able to assess students' understanding and their learning outcomes in a genuine and authentic way. And we've been having this discussion, and there's a lot of teachers talking about old ways being now rejuvenated, like the use of oral exams, presentations, the focus on process-based assignment at tasks and not product-based assignment. I mean, we already have these discussions before, but now with AI, they become more important. However, that said, my take towards AI and assessment, I would say we need to look at assessment as I like to talk about a hybrid kind of approach. There are certain assignments that we can allow students to use AI to work with. And there are certain assignments, if we want to really kind of evaluate genuinely how the understanding of students independently of AI, then we can do some kind of assignments like in-class proctored exams that we can do with students to know what they are really, their actual understanding. But for most of the time, formative assessment, that is assessment for learning, the assessment that we do on a daily basis with students to help us understand how they are learning on the spot as the teaching is going on. These kind of assignments and assessment, we can use AI with it. We can also design tasks in which students can use AI to help them do the task, provided they document the process of using AI. So what I like to do with my students is I would say, for instance, well, okay, I have this assignment. For instance, let's say it's a project-based learning assignment. Say, okay, we have this project. You're going to work in it. You're allowed to use AI, but you need to show me how you used AI in the planning, in the decision-making, in drafting and everything. So you need to document the process of using AI, and we can have a discussion about it. And so we do not need to ban AI completely. We just need to think again about the design of assessment and design assignments that are AI friendly, and design also assignments that are that do not support the use of AI. So that's how I like to think about it when it comes to AI and assignment and assessment.
I love what you're saying too, that we're not looking just at the end goal. We're looking at the whole journey to get to, at the end result, right? And I was so used to right and wrong. It's very difficult to look at process, or to retrain us to look at process, which kind of brings me to my last question, Med. And thanks so much for this. It's super insightful, and I love your words. Where do you see this future going for educators? Like, you hear certain things like, okay, if you don't use AI will replace you. And like, what do you feel, in your opinion, the future of education is with AI that's going to be there, we like it or not? What's your feeling on that? Where do you see us going with this new mindset that we have with us all the time?
That's true. I like to see it. I like your word. You said the new mindset. That's exactly how I like to talk about it. When we had the pandemic, the COVID-19, and there were schools were locked, and we were, obliged to stay at homes, and we have this kind of new reality. We were talking about this new normal. So that's exactly what's happening right now with AI in education. We are now witnessing the birth of a new normal in education. And I have this discussion with teachers about AI, the danger of AI replacing teachers or replacing major things that teachers do. And I think, I always think that teaching is a little bit different. Because at the essence of teaching there is a social and relational part of effective emotional part of teaching that is very hard for AI to replace. And so, because we as teachers, we deal with students as social human beings, and which AI does not know. We know a lot about our students, their context, their social backgrounds, their affective and emotional states. Even inside the classroom, their body language, the looks they have in their eyes when they are talking to us. This kind of contextual and background knowledge is very important to teaching. And this kind of knowledge is only accessible to teachers who are teaching in the trenches. So AI does not have this access to this kind of knowledge. And so no matter how developed it becomes, it will never replace the social, affective, emotional aspect of teaching. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm very much optimistic about AI, and I strongly advocate for the use of AI in teaching and research. And I have been a very vocal voice online and LinkedIn. I get a lot of, I get into heated debates with teachers and, with educators about this. But I do see the huge potential of AI in education and research. And I encourage teachers to embrace it, to work with it, and to integrate it into their teaching.
Amazing. I love it. I'm a big AI fan, but I love the human aspect of teaching, but I also like that it liberates a bit of my time so that I can get more of that human interaction, which is, like you said, at the crux of teaching itself. So I totally agree with what you're saying on that, Med. This has been fascinating. I'm sorry that we don't have more time, but I would love to continue this conversation with you. It's been really enlightening, and you've made us all smarter, Med. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris, for having me. A really wonderful discussion. And thanks for the questions. They piqued my interest to think even further about what I have been dealing with all this time. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, man. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.